That's my shirt. It's the boogeyman. I shouldn't have recorded myself doing that. I just
I don't even know. I don't know what that shirt is.
it's actually a Radiohead shirt. I got it at the concert I went to with Morgan a couple of years ago.
Okay.
This is, I believe, this is the titular King of Limbs from the album, The King of Limbs, everyone's favorite Radiohead
Well,
album.
hello, Mr. King of Limbs. How are you today?
I'm quite well, thank you. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Why?
That was not where that was going.
This is now I'll make this my VTuber model. This is what it'll be. I think I'm gonna become really popular, guys. Center. Find your focus. Align the chakras. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Jams and Tea podcast, where we spin the jams and spill the tea, and sometimes we spin me. And now we are here to talk about two new albums. We're here to talk about the latest album from dance pop sensation Jessie Ware. We are talking about her new album, Super Bloom. And we're also going to be talking about the latest record from singer-songwriter Noah Kahan. We're talking about his big new record, The Great Divide, but we're going to start off with Jessie Ware. Now, those of you familiar with the lore of this show will know
How
that
you doing?
one of the first major impact events of this YouTube channel when we all started reviewing music together, and it was the five of us. We reviewed Jessie Ware's album What's Your Pleasure in 2020, a huge contender for album of the year for tons of like press outlets and stuff and critics, a huge record that it dropped and really kind of announced Jessie Ware as an artist to watch in general, just because some of her older stuff hadn't really caught on quite as much. But now we had that record, and I broke from the pack because I was not really a fan, and it kind of began a years long arc of everyone making fun of me for this, deservedly, frankly. But at the same time, I was somebody who was still really confused of just like, I love dance pop. Why the fuck isn't this doing it for me? And I ultimately came to the conclusion that What's Your Pleasure really just wasn't my cup of tea because 80s house and dance is an aesthetic that I just don't really like. It feels kind of clinical. It feels a little bit sterile to me. And that's not to say that Miss Ware, through any fault of her own, did not endear herself to me. She is an excellent performer, a fantastic lyricist, and also a very talented dancer from what it seems like. But that is not where our history with Jessie Ware ends, because we covered the follow-up to that album, the absolutely spec fucking tacular dance pop record that feels good in 2023, which for a while was a frontrunner for my album of the year. So I had a pretty big character arc in between these records, but this was a full commitment to the kind of new disco revival, which were that kind of was in the album that preceded this, but this was a full embrace and just kind of a full-blown disco throwback. And until Sudan Archives last year, I would have told you that this is my dance album of the decade because it is just so much fun. 10 of the most compact, definitive, well structured, beautifully produced disco dance pop songs I've ever heard. It's terrific. It's fun, it's campy, it's silly, it's a great time. So I was happy to be in Jessie Ware's corner. So naturally, I was anticipating whatever she was going to do next with bated breath. And now we have this new album here, Super Bloom. And Super Bloom here is an interesting record because it creates an interesting dichotomy between these last three big releases for Jessie. In that I kind of figured with the last album, I was like, this kind of feels like the album where she kind of gets to let her hair down, where she gets to cut loose a little bit. There's a bit more of a free energy. There's less of the more contained grooves of that first record. This was a little bit warmer. It was a little bit more expressive, sillier even. And Superbloom kind of continues in this trend and ends up being an album that I kind of feel like is to these past two records what I kind of thought That Feels Good was to What's Your Pleasure, in that it is a frivolous record. And frivolous is not necessarily a bad thing. Frivolity in music, specifically in pop and dance music, can be a good thing. And I would argue that on Super Bloom here that it is. That being said, Jen, I do not know what your relationship is with Jessie Ware, and thus do not know if I can leverage it and make fun of you, and thus continue the cycle. So I must know, what exactly is your history with Jessie Ware? Is this your first Jessie Ware album, and how exactly did this play to your ears, friend?
This is my first Jessie Ware album. I did not know what to expect going into this. So when I press play on this and we get to I Could Get Used to This, and it's a straightforward, no frills boogie track,
I could get
which
used
I
to
would
this.
describe much of this album as. It's very straightforward, it's very no frills, dance pop and boogie music. And I like it. I like it quite a bit. I like the way that this album can occasionally implement some regional sounds. Like I love the beachy swing on the song Mr. Valentine with the
Ah, it's so good.
conga drums and the thicker bass that's higher up in the mix. But you're also going to get frivolous is a good word to describe it because you're going to get a lot of simple, repetitive flows and grooves that allow for easy listening to pleasant melodies. It's an album that is often very fun to listen to, very fun to follow along with. But we've talked about a lot of dance music this year that has been kind of pushing the genre forward and challenging the nature of what dance music can even mean for the community and all this and that and the other. This is the closest that we've come to a dance album that we've talked about on the show that's built entirely off of pastiche and reverence for the
Yep.
old stylings. And I enjoy that, but it's not as much what I've been here for through my journey of getting more into the genre the past year or so doing this show. That doesn't mean I don't think this Jessie Ware album is good. I do. It's just exactly what I expected.
I really don't think I could agree with you more because everything that is typically excellent that people have come to expect from a Jessie Ware album is here and is good. It is a fun, robust album filled with songs that kind of ride the line between being more typical expressions of just kind of dancey sensibilities and just kind of her specific brand of campy fun. And whenever she really leans into that, like on I Could Get Used to This, for instance, I love, like, there's something about Jessie Ware's delivery style and vocals that makes her delivery of hooks specifically sound so unique to her. The way that she accentuates words on the I could get used to this. It's a strange kind of groove that it adds to the song, but it works. It means that, like, there's this strange tempo that she's able to lean into as a performer that I really, really like, that a lot of dance artists aren't necessarily able to operate within. She has a real eccentricity to her that reminds me of people like Bowie, for instance. And like it's very, very fun. Mr. Valentine, as Jen mentioned, is another big album highlight for me. Maybe even my favorite song on here, just because I mean it's so much fun and the production is an absolute blast. I also really dig songs like Don't You Know Who I Am, which is, very humorous in its lyricism, but production-wise, this song has some of the biggest muscle of anything on the entire record. And the closer, Mon Amour, fantastic little song. In between these more major moments for me, though, I will admit this is an album that just kind of does what it does well. And it doesn't really do a whole lot new that we didn't get from those previous two records. I felt such a definitive sort of proclivity towards making songs that really did feel like journeys in and of themselves on the previous record. Every one of them was so structurally distinct. Every one of them had this very specific air of dynamism to it, even if it wasn't a super big, like meaningful song. It was just an album that really knew where its priorities lie. This, on the other hand, it really does feel like the name of the game is to be a bit frivolous. That's kind of what the theme of the album is just indulging in frivolity. You see that on songs like Sauna, which is interesting. I like this song, but I also don't really understand it, I guess. I feel like I'm trying to apply a little bit too much of my mental faculties to unpacking what this song is, but it's just like it's supposed to be a song about like letting loose and going to the sauna. But at the same time, it's like positioning itself as like this thing. It's this like important thing that I'm not really sure the emphasis of the lyricism really like backs up the melodrama of the music, I guess. And that's kind of a current sort of like, that's a bit of an issue that's on some songs here, like Ride,
Here's
for
something that I'm
instance.
thinking about, which is that tributes to music of this kind have two options. You either do what Jessie Ware does here, which is go full pastiche, keep it simple, experiment with melodies, do what people like. But then there's the other thing that you can do, which is what I've seen some artists do with bringing back these kind of older big band or jazzy or dancier aesthetics, is that you put a little bit of show tune energy in there
Mm.
like that "Where's My Husband" song has,
Yes, yes,
where
yes,
you
yes,
make
yes.
something that because it's using so many tried and true aesthetic components can get really freaky structurally. Like that "Where's My Husband" song is really weird compositionally, but it's
Yes.
because Ray is using those big band aesthetics and these really fun vocal licks that she's able to like get you invested in the different moves that the song is making. And this album has a couple of moments like that. Like "Don't You Know Who I Am" definitely has a little bit of that show tune energy to it that I
Hmm.
think if you wanted to progress this kind of boogie music, that's one way that you could do it, and I would like to see more of it. And I
Yes.
think Jessie Ware would be good at doing that if she were to commit to it fully.
As it stands, it's a bit of a like default Jessie Ware album. There's nothing necessarily wrong with it. It's just it is an album that feels consciously a bit less ambitious than the things that preceded it. And you don't have to be ambitious to be great, but Jessie is an artist who seems to be really, really adept at kind of synthesizing, being just a little bit more thoughtful and being just a little bit more unique and kind of breaking from the pack when it comes to this whole dance pop revival thing. Like there are songs on here like Ride that I think are foundationally quite solid. And I mean, like, it's a song called Ride and it's a very sexually explicit album. I wonder what this song's about. But that's kind of the thing, is that I wish that this leaned into it a little bit more. I kind of wanted a little bit more bombastic, just sort of explosiveness, because that feels good, for instance, was an album that really did lean into that. On songs like Freak Me Now or Shake the Bottle, it was like these are songs that are consciously ridiculous. And nothing on here really meets the moment in terms of that ridiculousness. So everything is a bit in a like a middle ground of sorts. And then there are moments that kind of break from the pace near the end, like 16 Summers and No Consequences, which feel not bad, but like kind of flabby at this point on the album. It's just, it's not what these records are built to do, and lingering in this specific lane for so long, I feel, does kind of harm the pacing just a little bit. But like, this is still a just over 40-minute long album, and it kind of disappears in the blink of an eye. But that's kind of the problem, is that I like it, but at the same time, these songs do not seem to hold or occupy the same level of brain space or memorability that the other ones that I love did. So it is a solid dance pop album. It's a fun little throwback. I think if you're a Jessie Ware fan, that this is something that you're going to be interested in. But if you're looking for something new, if you're looking to follow in that trend of newer dance pop artists who are bringing something new to the table, I don't quite think this is going to cut it for you. And it does have a little bit of an off-kilter flow to it. It's a less stakes album for Jessie Ware, which is fine. Like I feel like this is an inevitable of like thing that artists just sort of have to do, where it's just like I have to make an album just to kind of get it out of my system. And that's kind of what this feels like. But it is sort of a it's kind of like the Big Thief album from last year, where it's just like, yeah, this is distinct from everything else, but it very much feels like a stepping stone to wherever we're gonna go after this. Like that's what I'm really curious, because it feels like Jessie Ware has kind of done all she could do with this. So it feels like maybe next we might see her pushing at some new influences. Perhaps. I would look forward to it. I will still look forward to it, even though this is not blowing me away like the last one. But yeah, this is a good time. It's just also only a good time, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I feel pretty much the same way.
So thumbs up.
Yes,
Peace.
still a good
At
album.
peace. So, Jen, we're also talking about Noah Kahan this week, and I'm gonna just upfront admit something, is that I only know about this guy because of how often the music press and music nerds make fun of him. This has been the
Oh,
entire reason Noah Kahan has been on my radar since that album Stick Season came out. So I am kind of coming into this a bit unprepared, but I also knew that I was like, okay, music nerds, I am one, but we're also fucking insufferable about literally anything that becomes marginally popular or marginally mainstream. And this guy seems to have a decently vocal fan base, and he seems to make music that still does well enough critically to be taken seriously. So, like, I wanted to give this the best shot that I could. But you were the one who put it in front of me, and I'm just curious, what exactly is your background with Mr. Kahan here? Because I was coming at this from a different angle, I feel like, than most people were, but I was still trying to be understanding. I wanted to go into this and just be like, I want to give this the benefit of the doubt. I don't want to go in here be here a music snob and be like, this is the mixing and it's not good enough for me. Like, nah, I didn't want any of that bullshit.
I can't stand the mixing.
I don't have a
All
problem with
right.
the mixing for the record. The mixing on this album is fine.
So I've known about Noah Khan since Stick Season dropped, because I was friends with the right people in college. I knew that album was going to take over the world, and
And
it
you were right.
did. Stick Season was a huge success for him that, looking back now, is the thing that has now made him the king of singer-songwriter music that was formerly occupied by like Ed Sheeran, I would say.
Yeah.
And Stick Season was comparably successful to Sheeran's peak albums. It's probably gonna finish pretty high up on the Billboard 200 this year, even though that album came out 3 years ago, because it got multiple deluxe releases with big name collaborators on it that gave him some, Taylor Swift style second waves in the press for that record. And that's partially because he was struggling to make this one.
Hmm.
Noah Khan has since talked about extensively how the increase in hype around him post Stick Season and along the way of his Stick Season tour really got under his skin and really affected his writing process. And I saw Noah Khan twice, three times in concert between the release of Stick Season and now. And I'm going to tell you what happened at each of them. First time I saw Noah Khan live was at Bonnaroo in 2022, right as Stick Season was about to really blow up. It had already done really well, and his stage was very crowded, but he was also at one of the smaller stages of the venue. So it was like a quieter event that you really felt like you had to know it was going to be a big thing before you showed
Yeah.
up there and realized that it was a big thing, which I thought was interesting. And it was a very good moment for him. And it was a very good show. I saw him again at Railbird a year after that, upon the release of the deluxe edition of Stick Season with all his big features on it. And he looked tired. And he played like he was tired, and he sounded
Mm.
like he was tired. But everybody had a really good time, and Hosier came up and they sang their song together because he was playing the next day, and it was a really good show, and it was great. And I saw him again closing out Bourbon and Beyond, and he looked fucking exhausted.
Oh.
but was still like bringing it.
Oh,
But
okay.
Khan does this thing where in between songs he'll make a kind of joke at his expense about how bad his mental health is. I don't really know any other way to describe it. He's very open about
Uh,
his struggle with mental health in a court jestery kind of way where it's kind of like back before Bo Burnham went all out with it and would just look on
yeah.
the camera and be like, art is a lie and nothing is real. A lot
Yep.
of those moments were happening with Noah
Mm,
Kahan. And then as this album was coming out, I began to understand why. He also talked about in the big documentary that he did with Netflix about how this period in his career led to a lot of negative cycles in his life coming back up to the forefront. And this album, The Great Divide, feels like an album, a recovery record in the same way
yeah.
that something like Jason Isbell's Southernmost would have been.
I thought of Dying Star.
Yeah, and Dying Star would have been as well. And I even began to think of Rustin Kelly's The Weakness along the way through some of this record
Oh
because
yeah.
the thing about Noah Kahan and the thing that makes him so easy to dislike is that he's a perfect internet character.
Yeah.
He's a guy who's really good at memes, who's beloved by people who are really into a certain kind of music on Tumblr.
Yep.
But
Yep. Yep.
he's also, he's Mumford and Sons for people that want a guy that's writing about now feelings that can only be had by people who are on the internet. But he also is that guy. Like he's genuinely a dude from northern Vermont who grew up in the sticks with parents in pink collar jobs who all he ever wanted to do was make music. He's a perfect internet folk tale, and that's what
Yeah.
makes him so easy to hate. And I've never really vibed with the pronounced Noah Kahan hate of lumping him in with the, worst of the stomp
Stomp
clamp
clap.
hey, which has now been I saw a genre tag on one of his previous records that was like stomp and holler. And I was like, what is stomp and holler? It's like, oh, it's what people on Rate Your Music started calling stomp clap hey, so it wouldn't sound like a weird slur anymore.
And just as people who are, like around and from the holler, I just think that's really funny.
And frankly, we grew up at the peak of that like
We
trend in
did.
music. And
We
we
did.
saw like Stomp and Holler wouldn't have gotten as bad as it was if country music was not also as bad as it was at the time.
That's
And
true.
that anyway, that's a conversation for another day.
Most
What
certainly.
what I wanted to get out of the Great Divide, because here's where I'll lay on my cards on the table and say that I really, really like Stick Season,
Mhm.
but it's grown into, this is gonna sound really weird,
Oh,
in the same way that like Chaperone's album, it's gotten to this level where all the songs on it feel bigger than the album itself. And so
yeah.
sitting down and listening to the album feels tonally
Weird.
inconsistent with how you're supposed to be thinking about this music.
Hmm.
Of like, they're big radio songs and they're big playlist songs, but once you string all them together, you're getting this kind of incongruous experience of listening to this artist's music once they become big enough that they're just everywhere all the time, everywhere you go in public.
Hmm.
You're hearing songs off a Stick Season in the aisles of the grocery store. I know you are, because I am too. And so it's a
This
very
shit
different
goes crazy in
experience.
the Whole Foods, dog.
It's a different experience listening to albums like that once they bleed into what it feels like is just the day to day of being
Yeah.
alive, is where this music exists. It's like sitting down and listening to Michael Jackson. And just like
Yeah.
there's some music that just always feels like it's on out there somewhere in the world, and that's a
Hmm.
different kind of music. And Noah Khan has ascended to that level, and so listening to Stick Season feels really, really weird. But I still really like that album. And what I wanted out of The Great Divide was my ideal measure of any kind of follow-up for any album of that shape and form and magnitude in the public eye, which is just do something weird, do something kind of messy, challenge the fan base a little bit, make it clear that you have room to grow still and that you have new directions that you want to take things. And The Great Divide satisfied a lot of that for me because this album is big and messy. And those are
Yep.
its two most admirable and simultaneously challenging qualities as a piece of work in the state that it's in. Is this is a big, long album with a lot of challenging songwriting on it that can be very emotionally distant. There's a lot of very pronounced self-loathing in this
Oh yeah.
songwriting through layers of abstraction and frankly very clever and fun to listen to wordplay. There's a lot of great, very poetic, very try hard sentences and stanzas on this that I like to hear. I like hearing songwriters try to write interesting sentences.
Yes.
What else am I here for? And but what I love is that Khan, in the same way that makes him very good at being an internet folk dancer, is very good at knowing exactly when to cut to the meat of the subject. And moments like on Downfall, where he's talking about this kind of very tangled web of emotions with this person that he kind of relies on repeating their mistakes so that he can be there to pick them back up when they crash
Yeah.
out, which is a very strange emotional place that can lead to a lot of strange sadomasochism. And that song is a lot about a lot of strange sadomasochism and about examining that strange feeling of wanting someone to suffer a little bit because it would benefit you if they did. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
moments like that on this record where Noah Kahan is trying really, really hard to express a very particular emotional beat. And that can lead to a lot of these songs taking on very particular approaches, some of which can bleed together because they're ultimately getting at very zoomed in versions of the same kind of thing, but others which can create really stark contrasts between the dark places that Khan is trying to explore here in his lyricism. So, what was your actual impression of Khan going into this, and how did it play for you once you actually got into the meat of the thing?
If I'm honest, I barely even really had one. It was mostly stuff I had absorbed through osmosis. And like once I heard his voice, I was like, "Oh, it's that guy from the grocery." Like I mean, nothing against that. It was just that was how I recognized it. And I looked at the tags to this on Rate Your Music, and I saw that one of the genres was Heartland rock. And I was like, all right, we are now in my dojo. Let's see how this plays. Because, for those unaware, big Heartland rock enjoyer. I'm a big, 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 big Bruce Springsteen fan. Love me some Tom Petty. Love me some more obscure stuff. But we've needed some good mainstream heartland rock. Like we've got people like Sam Fender who were kind of bringing it to the forefront, who I'm also a pretty big fan of. And I would say that there's a lot of spiritual alignment between these two artists. And while it's not as wholeheartedly embraced by Kaon on here, I would still say that it is an admirable sound. Like the way I can best describe this album's virtues is through the opener, End of August, which is, in my opinion, the best song on here, and genuinely, like, this is a fantastic song. Like, I was a little wary just about this whole album just because it's big and it's an artist that I'm not super familiar with. And then I remember hearing the lyric, the sort of stanza of, and I thought getting older meant knowing it's too late to try, and I tried getting sober. I swear I did it better this time. And that lyric just kind of lodged itself in my brain, and I'm just like, oh, that's really clever. That's a very well written stanza there about trying to sort of break the cycle of the thing that you're caught within but can't find yourself out of, and you're trying to give yourself credit for the progress that you're making, but you're still falling into the trappings and failures that you did when you started trying to get better. And that's a very difficult and a very thorny thing. And I feel like End of August kind of explores some really interesting passage of time. Like it's a song that's all about just everything escaping you. I mean, the chorus is everything you see out here will die. It's a pretty like loud and upfront thing, but like it's done well. It's done with gusto. And I think that the instrumental muscle behind this as well is really, really solid. Like I love the slight twang that some of these guitars on this album have. The Heartland rock is again, it's not as big of an influence as it is on someone, say, Sam Fender, but it is detectable here. I would say that throughout this entire record, I could hear a little bit of it in pretty much every song. And I like that he has interesting song conceit ideas, like American Cars, for instance. Like, it's just such an interesting way of filtering his perspective. And it's like self-consciously not a perspective that he acknowledges as being like worthwhile or super insightful or anything. He is literally, he's very aware that he's just a guy. So when he's able to kind of pour that sort of every dude just being alive and kicking sort of perspective and filter it through something, you do get an interesting combination that I feel like clashes in interesting ways. Unfortunately, I have the single most boring fucking complaint about this album that one could, and of any album on this show, and that it's just, it's 80 minutes. It's an 80-minute long album, and it's not that it's like here's the thing. I don't think a single song in here even dips into being like mid or mediocre. I think bare minimum, every song on here is good. But like once we get past The Great Divide, the title track, this album just kind of, I don't want to say blurs together because the songwriting is consistently interesting. Sonically, on the other hand, it's like it's good, it's solid, but it runs out of ways to keep surprising you and making this feel like a more cohesive, flowing experience. Like once you get to something like Deny, 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 which is an interesting song, you get here and it's still just kind of like I can't help but feel like this would have hit harder if, there weren't three songs in between this and Willing and Able, for instance. It was something that I couldn't get over. It's not necessarily the length of the album, it's the structure of the album. I don't really think that there's a great way to make an album like this with all of its songs still there, but like I feel like there's a better way to sequence these songs. I'm just not entirely sure what it is. But I also don't want to take any songs off of this album because I feel like each of them does contain a very key piece of the portrait he's painting himself as somebody who is struggling trying to pull himself out of the hole that is alcoholism, and he is really, really putting in effort, and some on some of these songs he's doing a good job, and on some of these songs he's backsliding, and it creates an interesting push and pull that I just feel like needs to be honed. Noah Kahan just needs to grow a little bit as an artist, but like all the ingredients are there. It's just that they haven't been cooked long enough, if that makes sense.
I think that's a good way to put it because there's a lot of little experiments with song construction
Yeah.
on different songs on this album that I think if he leaned into more in other places would make these songs more interesting. Like I loved the vocal layering and the harmonies on Willing and Able. And I
Hmm.
also loved the, campfire pacing and quick hokey asides on Dashboard where in between lines of the song he's just going in the mic being like douche. I wonder why. Little bits like that. Where it's because yeah, what's the line? I think I wrote it down. All your new friends look a lot like your last. I wonder why. Just
That's that's a good line. He's like that's the thing is that he is as a songwriter, he's got just enough bite to him to be interesting. Like I know that like this whole thing is that like oh he's so popular, you listen to him when he's got Whole Foods, but like he's got enough edge to stand out from the pack. Like if anything, I came away from this project realizing that this dude has a lot more potential than I've heard people give him credit for.
the more complex these mixes get and the more ambitious that Noah gets, the more I like this album, which is why I
Yes.
found myself more endeared, honestly, to the second half, where I was able to figure out, like, we're trying this on this song. We're trying heavy slide guitar. We're trying
Yeah.
field recording on Heading
Yep.
North, which I loved for that song, which is one about reminiscing on this queer person that he knew who ran away from town. And he's just like, I hope you never feel like you have to come back. It's gone to shit without you, but I hope you're doing better wherever you went off to. Or We Go Way Back, which has this ethereal, subtle reverb to it that just makes the whole thing feel heavenly. And like I said, the slide guitar on Spoiled, the big switch up. This transition. My favorite moment on this album is just the 2 seconds of All Them Horses when that beat kicks back in on the
Yeah.
shift in the middle.
Yes.
That fiddle comes in and just that like big high note that he gives right here in his chest as
Hmm.
soon as the song
Real
shifts.
Bon
I was
Iver
like,
shit.
yeah, real Bon Iver level, the best of this kind of music that I can describe. And so I love the second half of this record where it really makes some swings for the fences. But it's, yeah, in its more inimitable moments that I find some of these songs kind of bleed together. Is think I have the exact opposite problem that you do, where before the Great Divide, those songs kind of run together for me. But after we get to that, I'm always able to pick out like, this is the little thing that makes this song different. And some on the second half still air closer to feeling a kind of sameness than other songs do. But I ultimately come down pretty positive on this album as the messy follow-up of the instant classic. It's kind of a
Yes.
perfect template
It really
for
is.
this kind of album where you're either just going to vary because this has all the usual problems of this kind of thing. It runs all the risks of the big follow-up to the big success country folk rock singer-songwriter album, and it does run into some of them. But if you're into what Noah Khan is doing, and I think it's safe to say that both of us are, it's a good time and you're going to enjoy it.
If you want to be proven wrong about perhaps some aspersions you may have towards Mr. Noah Kahan, I would recommend listening to this album because if anything, I walked away from this being like, no, I am actually interested in where this guy goes because somebody with his level of sway, his level of popularity, bringing Heartland rock to the forefront, like I am, that's a good thing. I want that to happen. In fact, I want him to lean into that even more if at all possible. And like I like how you're right. The best moments on this album have these really distinct moments where you're just like, "Oh wow. That was like that I really felt the artistic intent of the choice that you made." Like specifically with how gentle a song like the opener for instance is. That felt like such a like I felt like I was completely it almost felt like I was listening to an artist that I had some weird cognitive dissonance of just like this is the guy people have been like shitting on for a couple of years because like this is a really like tasteful, thoughtful song with like some really like choice layering and atmosphere to it and a really satisfying structure. So it's like I don't know. I feel like this guy's really fundamentally talented and he has a kind of everyman quality about him that doesn't make him like boring. It makes him seem just like a more observant everyday person. And those sort of little observations are going to trickle into his songwriting in ways that I think are interesting, satisfying even. I would say that like if this album was allowed to cook in the kitchen for a little bit longer, if maybe some of the less developed moments on here had a little bit more time put into them, or if they were taken off altogether, I feel like this would still be like, maybe make this an just a clean hour-long record. Just make it like condense it down to its best moments. And then I feel like you have something that would be like, if we're talking about album archetypes, the previous album would be The Rumors, this would be The Tusk, where it's the big, long, indulgent, and kind of like frantic and manic and sort of like just like all of the potential things that can trip you up in the recording process. You can kind of hear them, but that's also the appeal of the record. It's not quite there, but if this is what this generation, what this decade's version of Stomp Clap Hey music is, Look, we've come a long way, is all I'm saying. Like it's we could be doing a fuck ton worse than Noah Kahan. And I like again, if this is what you consider like unlistenable or something, like I fuck, man, I gotta get higher standards, I guess. Jesus.
I think part of it is just that his vocal range on the big songs on Stick Season, if you just have those in a vacuum, there's not a lot of there. But I'll
Hmm.
even compliment um, this album on this. There's a lot more vocal range on this than there is across all of Stick Season. He's working more with his falsetto. He's working more with different kind of vocal deliveries and melodies that call for different kinds of performances out of him. And so I think it's really good. I think he's improving and I think he's trying different things. And like, that's what I want. I want him to
Yes.
continue to grow and maybe lean more into that Heartland rock sound. He's worked with Zach Bryan on a couple of tracks that have gone on to some side releases that they've done that I think are really good. I think if those two really put their heads together and got the
Oh,
same people together,
I was
if
about
he
to
got some
say,
of
I was like,
Zach
that
Bryan's
actually makes me
dudes,
a little kind of excited at the possibility because that could be big. That could be
yeah, if he got
interesting.
some of Zach Bryan's dudes in the booth with him, I would love to see what came out of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He's got real potential to be like a really interesting country kind of crossover artist of being like being able to collaborate with a bunch of people who necessarily wouldn't have been able to like really cross over into the exact lane of the mainstream that he's very obviously in. So like, a Zach Bryan or I mean, again, a Casey Musgraves, for instance, I feel like that's within reach and I feel like that has the potential to be like supernova level hot in terms of popularity. So, if anything, this album convinced me that even if this isn't quite a great album, Noah has a great album in him, and I would like to be around for when that happens.
Hell yeah. I'm so glad I got you on the train with this because I've been a fan since the beginning before the backlash was really cemented in our circle. And so I was
Look,
glad to be like, this is the moment where I'm going to advocate for this guy that like all my friends love, that I've been listening to for years that I don't really talk about because I know it's got that kind of residual bleh on it on our side of the internet. But I'm here to tell you that you're wrong and you should try new things.
I look, if you're looking for someone to identify with the fact that like everything you manage to like latch onto and like think is interesting or start listening to eventually gets subsumed by the internet and called uncool by like literally everyone whose opinion you've ever cared about, and you have to be like, oh, okay, never mind. Yeah, I'm quite familiar with that feeling, so I'm rather sympathetic to the experience. It's a thing that I'm very glad I've unplugged from social media to the degree that I have, because it's something I encounter far less now and I'm very much all the better for it. Just try some new stuff, even if people say it's lame. Just take make an effort.
And
God
for the
damn it.
people that are on my side of this, I used to think of what I'm about to say with despair, but now I think about it as a great triumph. And it's that if nobody is hyping up the thing that you love, then you have to do it.
Yeah,
And you
and
can.
and now we're here. Hyping. Thumbs up.
Thumbs up for Noah Khan.
I I feel like this continues my complicated history with Jessie Ware, where it's just like I'm off again, on again, and then I'm like, but I'm also being like, I'm not making it onto the good graces of any music nerds by saying that I slightly preferred the Noah Kahan album to the Jessie Ware album this week, but
It is
oopsies
what it is.
is what it is. Uh, if you enjoyed this little discussion, please leave in the comments below what you thought about these albums or what you are listening to. Tell us about it so that we can talk about it in the future, potentially. Hit that thumbs up button and that subscribe button if you would like to hear more. And as always, everyone, rock over London. Rock on Chicago. Avis. We try harder. I don't really know like the degree to which one tries, but they try harder. Sure.